Okay, I'm very excited, very, very excited, I should say, to have CB Spears or Charlie Spears on with me today for another Beyond the Canvas podcast. Charlie's a podcaster that I learn a lot from, actually, and a buddy. And I've been fortunate enough to hang out with him, IRL when I've been able to travel to the States for work. But here we are connecting on the interweb. Charlie, welcome, dude. Obviously I'm going to have to get you to do that thing where you introduce yourself, but first of all, thanks for hanging out.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I love doing this. I'm a podcaster now, so I make a business out of talking. And you're an easy person to talk to, Brett. You're very good at this. We go back years now. I mean, I guess we go back 3 years because and in like Bitcoin crypto, that's tenure now. So that's very far back now.
Yeah, well, I've known you for a decade then, clearly. Yeah. I know it's funny, podcasters, there's that whole shtick that, Bitcoin needs more podcasters. But, we joke about that. I actually do listen to what Bitcoin did. I actually love the new host, and also shout out to Peter for all the work.
I mean, he's down there with you in Australia, right?
He is. Yeah. I know. He talks a bit about it. He gets to travel the world a lot. So shout out Danny. I'm sure he listens to this. He might listen to your show. You never know. I am an avid listener, like we were talking about prior to hitting record. How's it going? Working for Blockspace Media, you guys are putting out amazing podcasts. I listen to the Bitcoin Season 2 one, but you do the mining pod, and is it the Gwart show?
Yeah, Gwart. Yeah. So me and my buddy Will co-founded Blockspace Media, and it is just a Bitcoin industry media company. We're independent. We're staying pretty niche, and I don't know if you're familiar with the landscape of media. I don't purport to be a media mind or media mogul, but Will understands this very tactically. But the landscape of Bitcoin and broader crypto media is that there are very few professional outlets which have tenured people who know the business and are independent. If you look at the big names, Blockworks, CoinDesk, the various Forbes subsidiaries, Cointelegraph, they're all owned by much larger media companies, and most of them are not really they kind of hire reporters from traditional media backgrounds who they don't speak the business of crypto. Everything's kind of new to them, and they have very low bullshit filters. We have, through blood, sweat, and tears, built very good bullshit filters and strong relationships in the Bitcoin category. I also think, from a positioning standpoint, there's a lot of Bitcoin talking heads out there, and most of them are pretty narrow-minded. They do not speak the language of broader crypto, and you can see this today in the current debates. They're very bewildered by other economic participants, and we are not, because I and my co-founder and the people we have do a lot of legwork, and we are not narrow-minded, because we don't think we're narrow-minded. And so we try to cover this, and we position it and hand this to the investor or the analyst who wants to know what people are doing. And so we do, Bitcoin tech, Bitcoin culture, Bitcoin mining, some broader crypto stuff. So it's a year. I guess it's been almost 2 years now, which is weird to say, but yeah.
Wow, that's longer than I thought. Time, like you said, time goes so.
It's technically February of 24. So
almost 2 years.
Yeah. So it's getting there.
So then, what led you to this point? I said at the start, we'll get you to introduce yourself. How? Let's do that thing. How did you get into Bitcoin? I know you've been involved in mining. You said, you were a radio host. You said, I've seen you DJ. You've got this kind of media background somewhat that I'm sure has helped, but a lot I'm sure has gotten you to then be
I tell the story.
I'm qualified.
I tell the story different every time. I like to add a new dimension or twist onto it. So I've been in Bitcoin a long time. I've been interested in it. You could find tweets of mine from a long, long time ago. But I did not work in Bitcoin professionally. Honestly, for many years, I thought that I would never be able to work in Bitcoin because I'm not a software engineer. I'm not a dev, and I'm not going to run some kind of like trading firm. But then the block size war happened in 2016, 2017, and that was a very stressful time for me because I did not have a very good understanding of what Bitcoin was, and that's why it was so confusing for me at the time. As I imagine, many people during the filter debate currently are very confused because they don't actually know how Bitcoin works. So that was my like stress test moment. And during that time, I got really interested in the mining side of Bitcoin. And at the time, it was all in China. It was really arcane and not very well understood. And it was not very clear or well understood across the industry that it would use a lot of energy. My background is in oil and gas. This might surprise a lot of people. I spent many years building an oil and gas data mining service and selling that as a product. For a brief moment, right out of college, before that, I worked for National Public Radio, which is like the NPR affiliate. If you're in the US, you know, it's like the public radio affiliate. Everybody's like, it's the woke libs now, but it's, you know, the soft speaking, like calming, soothing voice people that the liberal elites love to listen to. But I did local news for it. It was awesome. But there wasn't enough money in that, so I went into entrepreneurship and did the whole oil and gas thing. But then the block size war introduced this dimension that Bitcoin mining was very energy intensive. I live in Oklahoma, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, the former oil and gas capital of the world prior to moving to Houston and maybe the UAE or Riyadh. But I kind of was one of the first people to do this thing of putting a Bitcoin mine on a gas well. So if you're familiar with that, you can kind of look. I've actually done my own kind of like circuit of talking about it and some documentaries showing our stuff, and mixed success, frankly. I have made money doing it, but I wouldn't say for the amount of work I put in, was it worth it? No, it was very, very stressful. Bitcoin mining is a very, very difficult industry emotionally to be in. So that brings me to 2022, where I've got a few Bitcoin mines. It's the bottom of 22. FTX happens. I've got like the biggest deal lined up, and like I've got money and I've got things, I got people, and like everything just falls out because no one wants to be in this business post FTX. Sentiment bottom, it was terrible. So, and I was like realizing I didn't want to be in this business either. And I felt like kind of trapped. So anyway, I spent a month or two, kind of depressed, and played video games with some of my friends here in town. One of whom you may know is Cypher. And
shout out Cypher.
Yeah, shout out Cypher. Hello. And through that, I was like also very hungry for new ideas in Bitcoin. And it was a very stale, stagnant time in Bitcoin because I didn't really kind of align with the average Bitcoiner, but I was not very public about this. And that's when I kind of honestly stumbled across Casey and Aaron's podcast, and that led me to the blog that Casey wrote about ordinals, which led me to the Discord, which led me to talking about that, which then kind of put me in a weirdly central position on the ordinals come up. And it's really weird because I happen to be one of the only people who's like in the Bitcoin world, pretty connected in it, very familiar with how Bitcoin works, and had just was able to ride the wave of that momentum and my personal interest, and actually honestly make a pretty big career pivot out of mining into the business of talking about mining and Bitcoin at a technical level. So now I weirdly enough have come full circle from my original job 15 years ago when I did public radio, I did local news. Now I get to finally be a podcaster, and it's way more fun than working for a small radio station in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So there's my story, Brett. You can take it any way you want.
There is a lot to unpack there, that's for sure, you know, and I love that it has come full circle, and you can tell you're very good at it. So for people who don't listen to it, they should have a look at, you know, follow Charlie on Twitter. We'll get to that later, and follow his podcast and look up Blockspace Media and whatnot. Listen to Bitcoin Season 2, particularly, pardon me, if you're involved in ordinals, because I think, you know, that's why I love doing these as well. And I came from an education background, so there's a lot of that in this too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's good to like, of course you can just be a degen and trade and not really have like a deeper understanding, but I do think a deeper understanding helps. And it's funny, you talked about the block size wars, and now we're in this kind of new war, really. Like you said, a lot of people probably don't understand the filters debate. Do you want to maybe like just give people a bit of a lay of the land? I know it's a big topic, but a bit of a TLDR high level.
Yeah, and
like,
I'll let you we can talk about it, or we can totally change the subject. I'm down however you want to do this. I don't know like if your audience wants to learn about it, but
just a little bit because they need to know.
Okay, a little bit of it. I'll cover it. So it's a debate over it's actually unclear at this time.
It is.
It's actually unclear what the debate is over. For a long time in Bitcoin, dating back to 2012, 2013, people have had issues with the ability to to make transactions which are not like sending money back and forth. So Bitcoin, it's a monetary network. Its primary use is people sending Bitcoin from Charlie to Brett, Brett to Charlie, and back. But because it's really like a system and you're really just like constructing transactions, which are really just data, some of that data does not necessarily have to be a monetary transaction. So basically Casey Rodarmor figured out a way to turn that transaction into a JPEG. And there are places in Bitcoin and places in the Bitcoin transaction and places in the Bitcoin block that you can like do this better and more effective and cheaper. But the short version is that's really difficult to prevent people from doing it. So it's like very difficult to prevent Casey and us and Gamma and Charlie from putting data and JPEGs into Bitcoin blocks. And in order to prevent that, you would actually need to like hamstring or actually reduce or really just like neuter like ways that people want to use Bitcoin in a financial way. This is because of math and reasons in cryptography and dev stuff.
Yeah.
And so there was a debate where people say, well, people like Casey should not be able to do this, and we need to figure out how to prevent them from doing this. And people like me say, you can try, but it's one, not really that big of a problem. Two, is a massive onboarding event for Bitcoin. And three, if you try to do it, you're just going to end up harming more people than you benefit. And so that's what the debate is over. There's a lot of arguing. Honestly, we spent literally 2 years arguing over a thing called relay policy, which is I'll be frank, the dumbest fucking thing ever. And I think that it's really embarrassing that it took 2 years like to argue about that, to get into the real thing right now, which is, do we soft fork Bitcoin? Do we actually change Bitcoin itself to prevent these types of transactions? And I just look at it, I'm like, guys, Bitcoin operates the same as it always has. Transactions and fees are an all-time low. These JPEGs, these things are not preventing anybody from using Bitcoin. This is simply, gasp, a moral crusade that most of you are waging because Bitcoiners spent many years being very hostile to anybody who doesn't like fall into this narrow like Bitcoin cultural category. And really, this is what happens when a network succeeds: is more people come in who use it in kind of unexpected ways, and Puritans who may like try to appeal to some moral authority, they find themselves drowned out. And that's what's happening right now. There's a few people who kind of lead it and spearhead this movement, and then a bunch of like, I would say, ignorant, dumb supporters of the movement who don't really know anything, and they're very loud on social media. But when I talk to, because I have a media company, when I talk to people who like manage lots of money, or companies who like big mining companies, or people who actually make decisions, whose like opinions and like businesses and activities matter, they don't know this exists. They have no idea about any of this, and they think it's stupid. If you want the most recent update in the past 2 weeks, there is like this fork that's proposed, BIP444. And you may have seen it on Twitter, don't know what it is, but basically it's kind of like the culmination of all of this arguing. And we're seeing in the past like week some of the figures who have like been pushing this narrative for years start to distance themselves from it because they realize that it's fucking stupid. They realize that it is insane to try to support this, and it's ridiculous because they're coming around to realizing that we were right 3 years ago when we made these arguments. It's like, okay, you can try to do this, but you're gonna degrade the Bitcoin network itself. You're gonna make it worse money. You're gonna actually have to confiscate Bitcoin from users. You're gonna have to it's gonna be extremely costly for you to do this. For what gain? There's really no gain. So, I'm trying to make it not technical.
No, it's perfect. I was gonna say yeah, no, that's perfect. I think it's really well summarized. And it part of my job and a big part of my job is working with artists and collectors, obviously. And a lot of them had never owned any Bitcoin prior to Ordinals. And I know, we could go through a list of why Ordinals is good, but that in itself is incredible for Bitcoin. And like you said, fees are sadly, unfortunately, at an all-time low. We can touch on that in regards to mining.
It's great if you're an artist. It's great if you're an artist. It's bad if you are thinking about the survival of Bitcoin. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, let's get there because there is that inscription that's like the meme of the guy saying, rest in peace, 1 or 2 sats per V, but I think it's 2 sats per V, but it's a classic.
That's an OG
but yeah,
reference.
Yeah, exactly. It maybe sound alarmist, but how much have you thought about the fee rates and where they're at, and miners? It must be, it has to be going through the miners' minds, and it's got to be going through Bitcoiners' minds, like where things are at right now. It might not be where people thought it would be in 2025.
Gosh, I mean, I will say that very few people worry about it right now. Miners don't think about this at all. I would say most of them. There's a few who are vocal on Twitter like me, who do talk about this a lot, but it's really not a common thought. The publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies do not really think or discuss this. They kind of hand wave it away. And among the most notable developers, there's not really much discussion either. But yet, Bitcoin is almost 17 years old.
Yep.
And 17 or 16 years ago, when Satoshi was still around, Satoshi said, quote, in 20 years, there will either be tons of transactions on Bitcoin or none at all. And while I don't think we should take everything Satoshi says literally, they do provide a good guiding light for us to look at and reference. We're closing in on 20 years. And we have transactions have been trending down over the past 2 years. And that's just because ordinals are not as popular as they used to be. And when I talk to a lot of people who ask about this, Bitcoin assumes that there needs to be some security budget in the future, and a lot of it will be active transactions on the network. A lot of Bitcoiners assume oh yeah, I mean that's 10, 20, 30 years away. Not worried about that. But it's I've been around a long time. And if you'd asked me 12 years ago, what I thought 2025, 2026 would look like, Bitcoin's at $100,000 a big. Oh yeah, Bitcoin transactions, there's so many of them. Everybody's using Bitcoin. And yet that is not the case. So I think we take a lot of this for granted. Bitcoin has built a very good, they've written a lot of fanfic, and they built a whole a mythos and universe, which is geared towards defending Bitcoin and criticisms of Bitcoin. They've been very good at defending criticisms of Bitcoin from people who say it's never going to work. And so a lot of those criticisms have been it's never going to work. The issuance of Bitcoin is going to go to zero, and you won't have any revenue, and the network will fail. And the defense has always been, that's not an issue. You guys are too bearish. There'll be tons of transactions. And what's funny is we've almost codified these these like arguments in our head, which are really external facing, and we use them to rationalize to ourselves why these things like that we're going to be totally fine. I think that's a very naive, blind way of looking at it. I think every year that goes on, we should consider this more and more existential, because one of the foundational tenets of Bitcoin is that there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. If 10, 20 years goes by, we still don't have many transactions, miners are hurting for revenue, I know it sounds absolutely impossible to imagine, people will vote, the network will choose to make compromises on that 21 million number out of desperation. Their economic incentive will be, I have so many Bitcoin bags, it's so core to the world economy, and the miners aren't getting paid. Let's just change the supply just this once, and we'll start issuing more Bitcoin. They'll call it different things, but that is like the future we probably face if we do not accrue significant transaction revenue. So this is why I look at ordinals, and I look at runes, and I look at all these fun things happening on Bitcoin, and I invite those activities on Bitcoin. It's real economic activity. Yeah, it's mostly speculative, but also there's a lot that's not speculative. And I want people to do things with Bitcoin, and they pick up Bitcoin themselves. They use it all self-custodially. They make transactions on chain. They use Bitcoin for multiple reasons. And those are massive steps towards that better future that I think makes Bitcoin a more secure network. I get a lot of criticism for making this because this is like classic Bitcoin mining budget, security budget FUD. But I really do think that unless giant curveballs happen, like quantum or like crazy nation state mining game theory, which is probably going to happen in some capacity, I think that we could find ourselves in 10 to 20 years kind of like with our hands in our pockets going, well, shit, like wish we'd like thought of ways to like tackle this problem years ago instead of denying it. I say this is a very pro Bitcoin argument that I'm making, not like a FUD argument. I'm actually making a pro Bitcoin argument because I want people to like try to think, why is this not happening? And I have opinions why it's not happening, but I can
go there.
Yeah, I can. You want me to go there? I think that it's funny, like for me to say this, I think it's kind of funny because like the average listener here, when they hear like me talk about self-custodying their assets, they're all like, yeah, I've got Xverse, Phantom, MetaMask. They've only ever self-custodied their crypto assets. Most people don't. Like if people have ordinals, like you can't even use ordinals on centralized exchanges, really. Everyone, it's like crazy. Everyone uses their Xverse, Unisat, Magic Eden, OKX wallet. Like it's wild. Yeah. It's awesome. Most people in the world do not do that. And that's just because most people use Coinbase or Binance or these days the various like Bitcoin treasuries or ETFs, BlackRock's IBIT ETF. And that is because as much as you listener think it's like really simple to like secure your seed phrase and all that, it's still really complicated. It's like actually honestly really difficult for most people who don't like live and breathe this world. And there's not really a reason for them to self-custody their assets. Like, yes, I know, like they can be seized, but most people using these services are their clients of the service. The service needs those customers. They're going to make sure the majority of their customers are satisfied. Like, there's really not that many reasons for people to self-custody, and it's like really hard. I think I don't know the answer to like incentivizing people to use things on chain. Like, I don't know why. Maybe privacy is a good one. Maybe better returns on things or jurisdictional arbitrage, whatever. But I do know that we can make self-custody and using like actual Bitcoin on chain way easier. I think certain soft forks like Opcat, CTV, various options, those are huge steps in the right direction. I also think we can spend a lot more money. Like there's things we haven't really explored or rolled out with Bitcoin's current capabilities in wallets. There's so much more that we can be doing in the Bitcoin ecosystem and like Bitcoin tooling to dramatically improve its accessibility. I think we should be sprinting in all of those directions. To me, it's a shame that really the only interesting thing that happened in Bitcoin over the past like 3 years was like ordinals. Like, that was so cool. I love it. This is awesome. I have a lot of it. I'm a huge fan of the ordinals movement. I wish there were 10 things like that. There should be so many things going on in Bitcoin that you cannot possibly keep up with all of them. I can keep up with most things on like a single podcast. So like that, you know, my view is that we can spur a lot of this activity with smart, conservative introductions to things which catalyze Bitcoin builders, catalyze new investment in the ecosystem. It's just really, it is so difficult to push those things forward. So that's one answer. I have a lot of opinions, like more things you do, but that's like the high level, you know, my opinion on it.
Yeah, no, it's certainly interesting, and yeah, people could definitely hear about all the different, I guess, like builders and call them L2s or scaling solutions and whatnot. And all that. You've interviewed a lot of those people. How do you think, I'm just making up a year here, how do you think 2015 Bitcoiner Charlie would feel about 2025 Bitcoiner Charlie?
Oh, I would be so happy. I told you, like, I never could imagine like working in Bitcoin. I honestly, it's surreal. It took me 5 years before that was ever even something that I thought I could do. And then it took me maybe another 5 years before I realized that I think I need to be in a different, you know, sub industry within Bitcoin. I'd be really happy. I will also say that 2015 Charlie was kind of an idiot. I didn't know shit, man. Like, I was like buying Bitcoin for drugs back then. It was cool, but I didn't know. I was like, I could like trade it. I didn't like know.
Yeah.
I didn't like know what I was doing. I really didn't know how Bitcoin worked. Weirdly enough, I understood like the basics of some self custody, but I didn't really know what I was doing. Honestly, ordinals really catapulted that from I kind of really specialized in the industry of Bitcoin, but I didn't really have to like get deep into the technical side of Bitcoin. But luckily, I've spent a lot of time like learning to decipher signal in Bitcoin, which is so important. Being able to interpret what is like real and who's insightful. And so because I'd built a lot of those good relationships and like those like the heuristics for deciphering like information, I was able to kind of quickly follow the relevant stuff. But yeah, 2015 Charlie would be very happy. I think I'd might be revealing my hand a bit here, but I might be like a little 2015 Charlie was getting really into privacy at the time. So 15 through 17, I actually went through like a privacy recapturing era. I tried to do all like the privacy tools. I tried to kind of like pull back online and like, but I realized, and so I'd be very disappointed today because I'm a really public person. I'm very doxxed. I'm really public about where the city I live in. I'm not public about like further details, but like I think I'd be very disappointed about that. But that is one like maybe I would love to. I wish I were able to like figure out a happy medium between being like, "Hi, I'm Charlie Spears," and the selective information. There's a good blog post by Jameson Lopp on how to achieve this, which I recommend everybody read, because I haven't been able to do it as well as I'd wish. But I recommend everybody read that. It's like on personal privacy and the levels of privacy, and it gives a very pragmatic approach to like being able to like achieve a minimum level of privacy. So yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, and it's funny, like with I guess privacy and self-custody and all of those things. It's always on a spectrum. And, here you and I are on video. Like, you can't get much more.
Oh, yeah, I just like, my thoughts like, okay, some people can go total anon, which is great. I realize like my enthusiasm and my interest and like what honestly allows me to be in the industry is like the fact that I'm a public figure and I kind of present myself as this relatable person. And I try to be that. And so I love that. But yeah, I think in the future, people are going to, especially as AI sweeps across the world over the coming years, we're going to realize like, shit, like privacy is way more important than I realized. I think the past decade of like people like just kind of giving out all their information to the internet, like hasn't really bit them in the ass yet. I think it's probably about to, because information is no longer siloed. You can instantly know everything about the AIs can do everything with all the information in the world. So it's crazy. Yeah.
Do you think that, speaking of privacy, actually shout out to Danny for this episode he did. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was a Venezuelan guy that was in prison purely for sort of being like a freedom fighter and trying to challenge the status quo and whatnot. And he was talking a lot about how they use Bitcoin to, do interesting things for people that can't spend, dollars and can't sort of get paid for, things that they're doing for human rights, essentially. Do you think that we don't talk enough about that sort of stuff? Do people kind of focus purely on number go up, speculative stuff? Like, there's still so many cool things that Bitcoin does, or is that just not part of the narrative at the moment?
So it is part of the narrative, actually. One of the biggest names in Bitcoin is Alex whatever from the Human Rights Foundation. And the HRF is like has owned this, and there's a few other entities like kind of similar to that. And they do a very good job. I think this is one of the most universal messaging points about Bitcoin. It's what gets all my progressive friends into Bitcoin. I'm like, look, Bitcoin is the it's out of the nation state. It evades the corporate eye. Like, you have people being debanked. You have people in abusive, controlling countries. There's a great story about like women in Afghanistan who aren't allowed to own, like, have money, who are able to, like, for the first time ever, be able to like operate independently and extract themselves from abusive relationships. There's a lot of those stories, and they're decently well marketed. On Twitter, they're not. On Twitter, it's all speculative, and that's unfortunate. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, when I'm talking to, depending on who I'm talking to, I'll lean into those angles, and there are some people who do very, very selfless work. I'm like glad though that because like the human rights people, like, this is a funny situation, like where the human rights movement across the world over the decades like has kind of relied on like goodwill from people who have a ton of money or want to earn in the first world, but it's never been able to like align itself with an inherently profitable like ecosystem. And so like Bitcoin's this weird thing where because the number does go up a lot, like you're riding this crazy wave of momentum where people who were not wealthy before now have money and they're willing to donate it to you. And you always have, like, every few years, you have this crazy wind at your back, and you're able to use and harness that for the more noble purpose, which is human rights around the world. I think so many people are, so much of crypto Twitter is just in first world or privileged countries. And, like, you're not going to go hungry. You're not gonna go to jail for, having a wrong opinion. But a quarter of the world does live in gradations of that. And Bitcoin's huge for that. I have found that these days, like, my audience that I talk to is not as interested in that. There's other better podcasts, but I would like to try to cover that stuff more. It's just not been like the beat that I've kind of leaned into the technical and like the technical beat as of late, just because I'm able to understand that more. And that's a really big, like, gaping hole in the discourse. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe when the podcast gets big enough, I'll just retire and I'll do easy like layup interviews with like, yeah, so how'd you save the world this week? And those are the best interviews. People love that shit. You can send it to your mom and dad, and they're like, oh, my son's gonna win a Nobel Peace Prize for talking, and then you can take all the credit for other people's hard work of like doing actually, uplifting of human lives. So yeah, that's my riff on that.
No, absolutely. I'm going to send my mum this. Like, I chatted with Charlie Spears. Do you realize? And, but it's interesting that you acknowledge that. I was sort of thinking about it similarly, and I do actually wonder whether the Ordinals community, like artists, I think that would speak to a lot of artists. Like, I think obviously, I've spoken with artists, obviously not going to say their names, who are from places where it is pretty hard to get paid. It's pretty hard to have their own bank accounts, and art has actually been a way, and Ordinals has been a way for them to get paid for their wares, and they would never have really been able to sell their stuff locally. So it's fascinating stuff. Like, I'm going to steal one of your expressions, double tapping. You use that.
I love that. Yeah.
Double tapping on what you mentioned before. Like you said, you've spoken to the more technical people, the people building on Bitcoin, the people, they're all experimenting. Nothing's really stuck out yet. But you mentioned like the op codes. You can give a high level on what that even means when I say that. OpCTV, people have talked about OpCat. So, and there's other ones, so you got your Udis and Jeremys and Robs and stuff who work, working on things in those areas. Like you said that they could be things that could obviously help. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but, help Bitcoin, help drive fees, do all these potentially interesting and helpful things for Bitcoin in 20 years. Do you want to as much as it's maybe relevant to the Ordinals people, tell us what are those codes? Everyone's heard them. People have owned a Quantum CAD or still own a Quantum, that we've seen that stuff. Udi talks about it. Go for it.
I've heard a bunch of really good explanations of these things. And I don't know if I'll use any of them. There's if you don't understand what I'm saying here, then go listen to other people explain it. Yeah. This is the kind of thing that took me honestly a bunch of different passes at and some legwork. It is kind of important, but also it's it's up to you whether you want to dive into this. So Bitcoin is really just code. And the way you send Bitcoin from point A to point B is actually you just you basically unlock the Bitcoin that you have and send it to someone else who locks it, kind of. The way you unlock your Bitcoin, and the network lets you spend it, is you basically use your private key to generate through some script, and it unlocks it, sends it to that other person. We have a bunch of different actions we can take within that script, and you can tell it to do these different things. And some things are disallowed, some things are allowed, and there's different operations you can perform in those scripts, and some of those operations are defined by op codes. They're basically like a command that says do this thing. And some op codes are allowed, some op codes are just kind of placeholders, and what we're talking about is taking a couple different op codes, which allow you to do a couple different things, so you can unlock your Bitcoin in different ways. What does that allow you to do? I think a lot of people immediately go and they say, "Oh, OpCat lets you do DeFi," and I'm like, "Yeah, I guess it does." What it technically does is it lets you combine two things within that script or that stack. Because you can now combine two things, you can now build more complex scripts from which you can do things like DeFi. And it's a broad term. I would say, more importantly, things you can already do on Bitcoin, such as you have your private key and it secures your JPEGs, your ordinals, or your Bitcoin. Now, with an opcode like opcat or opctv, which is an abbreviation. I won't tell you what it's for, but opctv is the abbreviation. So these different ones. There's opmul, there's opdupe, there's lenhance, which is a package of opcodes. But anyway, these opcodes, like if we add them, they'll allow you to do different things, and you can, with those tools, think of them like tools in toolbox. You can build better UX. You can build things which allow you to secure your Bitcoin more effectively. Here is like a simple example of something that everybody wants, which you need either CTV or CAT for, or a similar opcode. This is one that everybody's happy with. Ordinals people, Bitcoin maxis, custodians, miners, everybody. Imagine you get hacked and your Bitcoin disappears from your wallet. Historically, that shit's gone. Historically, you're just out and like you lose everything. But with some of these opcodes, we can introduce a concept called a vault, where you can set up a backup address or multiple backup addresses. And if you wake up one day and you saw that your funds were swept 12 hours ago in your wallet, you can create another transaction which actually claws back and sweeps those transactions back to your safety address. This is a very important mechanic that everybody wants. This has deep implications. It makes it easier for people to like feel okay taking their funds to self-custody. And I use just the example of like 12 hours, 48 hours. It could be any amount of time. It could be, there's a bunch of different like ways you can build this. But imagine like with that basic concept, how much you could improve like the like Bitcoin tooling. Now I know that like might not get people excited because it's not like I can't create liquidity pools of derivatives of tokens to make more money. I'm like, that's great. Like why do we need like 20 more tokens? Whatever, if you still love tokens by now, I'm still like, I have a hard time understanding why you want tokens other than to get rich. That's great. Go get rich. But like, do we need more tokens? What we do need are better ways for people to use Bitcoin. Everybody agrees with this, even like the hardcore Bitcoiners. Like, so I think this would be like easier for your mom and dad to like, oh, I just install the app, and because there's like 3 levels of safety which aren't with the app but actually with the Bitcoin network itself, like now I can like be a little like more confident that if I like install the wrong malware, I don't get totally fucked. I'm like, oh, I have this like backup. These are huge things. And I just think if we had a more forward approach to adding stuff like that, more people would just use Bitcoin. This is bullish for your JPEGs because the more on-chain Bitcoin there is, the more on-chain activity there is, the more people who want to like own on-chain assets. So like there is a profit incentive for you here. There's a carrot dangling that I'll preach this. I'm like, I think digital assets priced in Bitcoin are like a very good, compelling value thesis, especially art. And so like, I want this economy to thrive, and the way it thrives is for more people to own Bitcoin in self-custody. So there's your pitch. I try to like angle it, whoever you are, like there's a reason for these opcodes. There is this I'll introduce this concept. Like there's this concept called ossification for a network, which has been around a long time. Email, certain internet protocols themselves, like because they're kind of decentralized and it's like a protocol, like enough people start using it, it becomes so entrenched that it's difficult to upgrade. Even if everybody wants it to upgrade, it can like still get really difficult to upgrade. Like email could be way better, but it's just so kind of stuck in its ways, and Google owns it, and AOL and Hotmail and Comcast own it, and like we can't upgrade the protocol. That's why email hasn't really gone anywhere for like 20 years. I fear that Bitcoin is headed towards a similar path because like it will ossify. Like, it almost certainly will ossify. That means it'll become so entrenched we can't change it. I just want to delay that ossification. I think we should fight to prevent that from happening, because the more stuff we add, the better we can improve Bitcoin, the better like tool we can make it for human rights advocates, the better like asset we can make it for artists, the better financial asset you can make it for real like finance and money people, and the more fun speculative things you can do on it. Like, it just gets better for everyone. And so yeah, I want to add more opcodes. There's a bunch, and it's really confusing to follow them. Udi has opcat. The Taproot Wizards advocate for opcat. It's a great opcode. It's not just the ordinals people like it. The super techie like devs love it too. There's other opcodes. There's CTV. I keep mentioning those, but there's like a dozen, and I don't want to go down the list, but I support most everything, because I believe that the biggest risk is not which particular one of these do we choose, but rather, do we choose anything at all? And that's the message I want, is like, I want many of these. Let's just move towards something. So a lot of my media and my work does like center around like trying to figure out how to make money off of like also promoting these things. And I think we're halfway effective at it, but yeah, so.
No, I think so too. It's a great resource for people to learn about the people who are experimenting, building, trying to push these things through, trying to champion them. And then obviously, you know, we've got the Lukes and the mechanics of the world spending all of their energy on other things. And I know that they're only two people, but, you know, like, are Bitcoiners kind of wasting their energy in places where they could be focusing it elsewhere? And you'll have people that say, but Charlie, like, Satoshi didn't, you know, got rid of it, you know, threw opcat out back in 2009. Like, we can't, you know, how do you answer that?
There's exhaustive answers and explaining why to all those questions, Brett. I think we should ask ourselves why like 5 or 6 thought leaders, of which Mechanic and Luke are 2 of them. Mm-hmm. Why only like a handful of people are able to manufacture a movement which has no real economic support and vast condemnation from a lot of the like devs who devoted their lives to this thing? Why are they able to manufacture insane fucking conspiracy theories and use those as wedge issues and waste everybody's time? If you want specific rebuttals of the things they've said, you know, there's a lot of them. Some of my posts, I've linked some of them. I have a master doc internally that I use, like collecting all the answers. But for the people who don't want a technical answer, don't want a specific answer, it's just that a lot of Bitcoiners became deranged and have a very Puritan view of what Bitcoin is. And the thing is, I don't want to knock on like hyper religious people or Puritans, because those are great. Bitcoin, you cannot. It's like trying to say that fire is an inherently good moral thing. It is not. It is a phenomenon. It's a technology. Electricity is neither good nor bad. It is a tool. A hammer can be used to fix and hammer nails. It can be used to kill people. It is a neutral technology. You are arguing about the physical laws of the universe and saying they should not be this way. And I rather say this is how things are. We can make them better for everyone. And when people say this is how things should be, they're also arguing we need to make these things worse for everyone. That is like the argument. And why are so few people able to do this and make such easily falsifiable, empirically falsifiable claims regularly? Because you do not see the people who oppose Mechanic and Luke making false claims at scale. You do not see this. There is a much better intellectual honesty on the anti-filter side. And for the people like, if you're like listening to this and you're like you got ordinals and stuff and you're like worried. I get this a lot. People are like I'm worried about this. Like are they gonna like break my JPEGs or be able to do art? Like because I was in your shoes back in 2016. I say this at the very beginning. It's like I was like terrified. I had a lot of Bitcoin. I was like, my life savings is in this. Like I feel like the community is splitting apart. A lot of those because I had a very poor technical understanding. I'm not going to try to explain it technically to you beyond what I've already said on this podcast. I just want to try to assure you that the people who are trying to stop JPEGs and stuff they're not going to succeed materially. They're not going to be able to amass enough like economic might to enact their plans. And the best case scenario is that you accidentally get a little bit of an airdrop. That is like the most likely scenario. So the reality is they're likely going to accidentally enrich you instead of make you poorer. That's the reality of it. So take my word for it. This is my opinion. Filter it, joke through whatever, lens you want to view it. But this is my encouragement to you if you're like scared about this and don't know how to navigate like the crazy, angry debate online.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on it because people do ask me, I get DMs like, are we at risk? Are my ordinals at risk? Is Bitcoin at risk? I think it really is an important and healthy thing to reflect on. If anything, Charlie, maybe they can straight away flip their Bitcoin Cash Junior into Bitcoin and buy some more ordinals. Maybe it's the liquidity injection we've been waiting for.
Oh, I hope so. Our mutual friend Lifo FIFO. What's probably going to happen is he's probably going to launch. Like things like the Puritans cannot prevent JPEGs. Like it's just mathematically impossible. Mm-hmm. What's probably going to happen is day one, if Luke Jr. is able to fork and make Bitcoin Cash Jr. pure, then Lifo's going to have a tool that lets you put JPEGs on their version of Bitcoin on day one. And you're going to have, what's going to happen is you're going to get airdropped a bunch of Bitcoin on their chain, and you can either sell it for Bitcoin, make a little money, but what'd be way more funny is to just burn all of your Bitcoin and put JPEGs and trade them. Do whatever you want. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, that, not financial advice and all that fun stuff. It's funny, when I flew to Vegas for Bitcoin Vegas this year, and it was lovely to see you there, obviously. I was on the plane from LA to Vegas, and Adam Back was on my plane. I should have said hello. It's wild I didn't.
It's wild how normal they are. Yeah.
I know. Well, I don't think, unless you're involved, people would know who he is. But anyway, he obviously doesn't love ordinals or inscriptions or whatnot, but he has, and at the start I was like, but he's basically come out and said, we're wasting our time. You can't do anything about it. Like, have your thoughts about it, but you can't do anything about it. I think and Casey said it, he's like, the best thing that people can do is just forget about it. Because like you said, you speak to and work with a lot of people that wouldn't know nor care that any of this debate that people feel is like the biggest thing in Bitcoin at the moment is even happening.
No, they don't even know it exists. You live in a bubble. You think even 2023 when ordinals were popping off, like still nobody really knew what was happening. And that is an encouraging thing to you because it means one, the market cap of like what you think matters is very, very small in the grand scheme of things, which means it can go higher. But two, it's a lot of work to change these things and to attack them. And so I think Adam just doesn't want to admit that he likes NFTs and on Bitcoin. You might not know this, but so Adam co-founded Blockstream. Blockstream has Liquid, which is a side chain. It's an L2, one of the oldest L2s. Liquid announced Liquid NFTs back in 2018. People forgot.
I remember that.
People forgot this because NFTs weren't taboo. And people just like Bitcoiners love to forget that like we used to love NFTs. It just happened that they were on ETH in 20 and 21. And so like a lot of people are like, oh, they're on ETH, they're bad. So no, it was like cool. These things are fun. And so I think that's why a lot of OG Bitcoiners are like, yeah, I mean, cool. NFTs, collectible assets, sure, whatever. Not my thing. I think Adam just wants to like project like that he's still like based and he still doesn't like want, you know, some of the frivolity on chain. I'm like, okay, fine, Adam, you're old, you've been around a long time, you're in the white paper and like you're directionally correct. So cool, awesome, man. Glad to have you against filters. Yeah, but there's for each Adam, there's like 10 other people who are like Adam who don't talk on Twitter. There's other deep-pocketed, big Bitcoiners who like you probably don't know the names of, and that's good because they don't want to be known. And they, they own or influence very big companies or whatever, and they also generally agree with Adam. They think all that shit's dumb. So be rest assured that the discourse you see online is just like the tip of the iceberg of what a lot of the actual people with money really think. Now, I'm critical of all those people with money. I think they should be supportive of other things like OpCat or CTV and stuff. But at least they're anti-filters. So
you can't win them all, but you're right. And as we start to wrap up, I know it's late your end and we've come up to an hour. I've loved this. I've been looking forward to this chat. I'm just gonna shoot a few kind of just like you can answer like, first thing that comes to your mind. We'll finish with a few quick questions because I don't want to, we could keep talking on so many topics.
It is late my time. It's early your time. Yeah. It's one of us needs to move to the other side of the world. So
yeah, I probably may, but I'm not gonna uproot. 20 doesn't matter what year. Like what did you love about Bitcoin? What was I know that's a big question, but like just 1-2 sentences. Like what grabbed you? Why did you just go, oh, this is amazing?
Oh, it's internet money. It's something that you don't need any experience. There's no experts. I know it may seem like there's experts. There's no experts. You can jump in. It's such a fast moving industry that you can kind of jump in and within a couple of years be like pretty well versed. I love that. It's disruptive, and as much as it is political in the U.S. today, it doesn't have to be. So I really like that it's one of the few actually apolitical things. Yeah. So those things I like about it.
Well said. Yeah, we didn't get into the politics of it, but that's a different podcast in itself. Ordinals, you read about what Casey was doing. You got involved early. You obviously became, buddies, met the team, core Ord team. Like, what do you, apart from, on-chain activity and whatnot, what do you love about Ordinals?
Oh, it might be cliche, but I love the community. I also, it breathed life back into Bitcoin, man. Oh, man, I tell you, I was like depressed. I was like playing video games. I was like looking for something fresh. And Ordinals was fresh. That's what I love. I liked NFTs before they were on Bitcoin. I own a lot of undisclosed like ETH and Solana NFTs. And so I like those. They're all super cool. If you've been buying Bitcoin for so many years, like, why don't you want to use it? You like people say, oh, the whole goal is to stack and amass wealth. Like, no, it's not fucking. The whole point of like money is to like use it and turn it into things that you want. This is my passion. This is what I spend 100 hours a week thinking about. Of course, I'm going to spend Bitcoin and do Bitcoin things. And so one of those things happens to be Ordinals and JPEGs, and they're really fun, and I love that.
Yeah, as do I. And you're right. Like it is about like any on-chain economy. Sure, save some of it, but you want to spend some of it. And culture has brought people to Bitcoin, as we touched on. Dare I say the dirty R word? Runes, just first comment, anything.
I think I'm like one of the only people who still like enjoys runes. I'm bummed they're to zero. I told Casey, I was like really clear that I thought it was a mistake that Casey was building into the Ordinals client. I was really critical of this, mainly because I don't like tokens. Like I can enjoy the speculative nature of tokens, but my heart's not in this for tokens. I think it was a mistake, a huge mistake, and he clearly agrees with me now. Casey, fucking idiot, dude. Like,
shout out, Casey.
Should have made it a separate thing. Should not have intertwined ordinals and runes. At a technical level, I think runes. It's a great idea. I think it makes sense. It's kind of Casey's like apology for accidentally creating PRC20. Yeah, I mean, I'm really bummed runes haven't worked out. I will say, even though Casey like introduced it in the literal blog post, which he wrote, at the very end of it, he said, tokens are, I'm going to paraphrase, I can't remember exactly, but tokens are a pit of avarice, which is greed. And they will lead you to ruin. He said something to that effect. And I'm surprised how quickly, how true those words are, because I didn't think that we'd be at zero. So I still hold like, I mean, I'm not an idiot. I'm very good at like selling free money, airdrops that I get. So, like I capture some of that, but I still got, some of my dogs, some of my Wanko, some of my Mr. Yan. Shout out Mr. Yan. I got all those, but I always make it a point not to like overextend myself in these. Like I don't want to. I've never full ported runes. I full ported talking about runes, but I just never really got. I have like a mixed record with meme coins, just because like you got to be online all the time. So I don't know. Runes would be really cool if they came back. Who knows? I'm not betting on it.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm not going to ask you like favorite projects and because we're not here to shill anyone, but like you specifically, and obviously it's what we do at Gamma, not, looking for a pat on the back, but
my favorite project
you and I are talking about
I know you're not asked for this, but like Gamma is one of the coolest platforms. Every time I'm talking to somebody who seems that they like a maxi who's like amenable or like open to like ordinals, and they're like, I just haven't seen any good ones. Like, go to gamma.io, freaking look at the prints, look at the custom artists. Like that shit's on Bitcoin. It's affordable. Like the prints, the price, like you could pay $10, you pay $50. Like that's what you would actually pay in real life for like a copy of like an artist like that you see on the street or like at a gallery, like a friend. Like I think it's one of the best products. I'm a huge fan. The curation aspect is awesome. So yeah, I mean, I know you didn't ask me to do it, but it's been 3 years now, and you guys have been building this, and you stay true to the vision, and I love it. So like, I mean, I would estimate that a third of my transactions buying like ordinals have occurred on Gamma since Genesis, because I don't really buy like the top tier inscription collections. I just kind of throw $50 or $100 at like goofy artists that I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm scrolling through the print. So yeah, there you go. There's your shill, because I
appreciate it. We appreciate it. Yeah, no, it's, we've clearly focused on that, clearly aligned ourselves with that, and we believe that that's like a long-term value prop for actually inscribing is putting art on Bitcoin. But we've, it's a permissionless network, and people can put anything they want. So last thing, again, like I'll return the favor. Like I highly encourage people to check out your podcast. So give us a quick little, like, how can people find you? How can people learn more about Blockspace, which pods, the newsletter, all these things that I love. But,
yeah,
you'd be better at selling
Blockspace, we put a bunch of media together. We own and produce podcasts. the podcast I lead is has been called Bitcoin Season 2, but in 2026 we're unifying all the podcasts into a single feed.
That's an alpha.
Yeah, I mean, you can see on our channels we've started converting channels over, but in 2026 we're unifying all the podcasts. But we have had the mining pod, the biggest mining podcast, Bitcoin Season 2, which is now the Blockspace podcast with Bitcoin Season 2 Flare. And we also have the Gwart pod, which is like, I would say like the smart person crypto podcast. But Gwart's actually good as Gwart's still like its own category. But we're kind of like expanding the podcast. But we got a newsletter multiple times a week, covering mostly interesting Bitcoin stuff, you know, that you haven't heard of. Some breaking news. You might not know this because this is not as public on Twitter, but like we publish a lot on Yahoo Finance, CoinDesk, Newsbreak. So like if you get push notifications to your phone, it's probably a Blockspace story. And let's see. Oh, got a conference. I'll even like tease that. Ooh, I haven't.
Ooh.
I don't
do it.
I don't.
Can you do it?
Many. I don't know if too many people will listen to this, so I'll like say it like we've done this conference, a technical Bitcoin conference called Op Next, named after an opcode, and it's like all the smart Bitcoin devs and like all the Bitcoin stakeholders, like institutions, miners, funds. Did it MicroStrategy this earlier this year. Did Fidelity in 2024. We're doing it in New York in 2026 at the New York Times building. So that is all I'll say.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah. So I think it's the first time I've said it publicly because I like you, Brett, and also those 3 high point details don't reveal anything else. So yeah.
Well, there you go. I don't often get, like serious pieces of breaking news. So there's your alpha. Yeah, that's my hook. So for people who have lasted this long,
yeah,
you got the scoop. Well, CB Spears, Charlie, dude, thank you so much. Pleasure to call you a mate, a buddy. I love catching up with you in person, so it's been a pleasure to catch up with you over the interweb for this podcast. Thanks for spending the time with us.
You betcha, Brett. Shout out you guys, the Gamma team, Nick, everybody. You all are fantastic. I love being in Bitcoin alongside you and seeing you in events. I will see you in person in 2026.